Hey, welcome to Let's Unravel. I'm your friend Christina. So Taylor got engaged. Okay, I'm sorry. We're not on a first name basis. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce got engaged over this past week. So thoughts? Are you excited or are you very annoyed about how this engagement has taken over the media waves everywhere? I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment down below. If you happen to be listening on Spotify, there is a poll. If you click this episode on Spotify, you press more, you will see the poll is all the way at the bottom of the show notes. So press yay or nay. I want to know your thoughts. And if you're listening on YouTube, drop a comment down below. Now, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, unfortunately, there's no way to make a comment there. But if you want, feel free to jump over to YouTube and drop your thoughts in the comment below. So next week is the week we are going to have our very first guest appearance. Now, I'm not going to spoil a thing. I'm not going to say who it is yet, but I will say I've talked to this guest and they are quite excited about joining the podcast. And I think it's going to be a really great conversation. Now, you are not going to want to miss this episode. So make sure you are subscribed on YouTube, you're following on Apple Podcast or Spotify, because this is not an episode you're going to want to miss. Now, if you want to stay up to date on any news or short clips of the show, feel free to connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at Let's Unravel Pod. So without any further ado, let's jump into our favorite topic here at Let's Unravel, win of the week. So I'm pretty sure every week I say I have a really exciting or this is the coolest win there is, and I can't help it. I get really excited about these wins of the week, and this win is no different. So a friend of the podcast sent me a record frame. And if this doesn't make any sense to you, that's okay, because back in episode 9, Niche Interests, I had talked about how I found my prized possession, which is a Back to the Future vinyl. And I had made a slight joke saying I should really frame this. Well, one of my listeners took it very seriously and actually sent me a record frame. So, of course, I'm going to show you what this record looks like in its frame, because that wouldn't be fair to you if I didn't do that. So without any further ado, this is my Back to the Future vinyl in its now record frame. So unfortunately, I can't lift the frame up any higher because there's a really bad glare. But for any of you that happen to just be listening and not watching on YouTube, it's just my Back to the Future vinyl. It is basically the cover of the first movie, and it's printed on this vinyl record. And then now the vinyl record is sitting in a record frame. So I'm so excited about this win. This will definitely be going up on my wall. This is a constant reminder of how much I love treasure hunts. Now, if you're curious about the backstory of the vinyl and you're curious about my reference to a treasure hunt, feel free to head over to Niche Interests after this episode, of course. So now it's that time of the episode to jump into our topic, or should I say, let's unravel. Let's unravel leveling up. And I know what you're thinking. Leveling up, it sounds like a video game terminology. Now, I've never been much of a gamer. I do appreciate a good game here and there. But I will say, if I'm thinking about video games, I actually always think of that movie called Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds in it. It's basically like a video come to life where a guy doesn't even realize he's a character in a video game. And that's just the first thought that I always think of. So leveling up, I think it's a great topic to get into, having just come off of our 10th episode and just the celebration and all of the lessons learned in that episode and moving into leveling up. And so with leveling up, I really want to focus on this idea of we can level up in multiple areas of our life. You can do it from career, you can do it in your personal life, you can do it, honestly, you can do it anywhere. I've always been really good at asking questions because I feel like the best way to move forward is to ask hard questions, let's say. But sometimes I find myself having a really hard time coming up with an answer, especially to simple questions. So with this idea of leveling up, I think the first place I start would be more kind of asking, like, what does that mean? And it feels very straightforward because, if you're thinking about it in terms of a video game or looking at it with face value, is I think it's easy to realize it means more you're going from one level to the next level, hence leveling up. And this leads me to this thought process of something that I've learned about myself is I'm really good at asking questions, though at times I have a hard time trying to figure out how to build momentum. So this episode, we are going to just really be talking about what those next steps look like. And I do think there is one fundamental thing to cracking the code on all of this. If you are trying to build momentum, you're trying to get to that next level, and you're trying to ultimately, if you've identified what the purpose is that you are going for, whether that's in your life, your career, you name it, there's one thing that is going to propel you further than honestly anything else out there. Now, there's certain trainings that you're going to need to do for certain careers. There's certain educational classes and preparation that you're going to need. But if there's one thing besides all of those things that are going to really propel you into that next arena or get you closer to what it is that you want, we are going to need to focus on one particular topic in this. And that particular topic is all about mentors. Now, I have been fortunate enough to have multiple mentors in my life. And the most important thing about mentors is they can leave a lasting impression on your life. That's something that has been really cool, especially with that concept about leveling up and how just even briefly talking about the movie Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds. But what's so interesting about video games and just this concept of leveling up is how you go from level to level. And what's so cool is once you unlock one level and you move to the next one, a lot of times you get to go to new places or you get new skills. But if we also recognize that there's always new challenges. And what's also cool is as you get to those next levels, sometimes you meet new characters. And those new characters can either be villains or they could be mentors. And that is what I think is so unique even about video games is there is a storyline behind progressing forward. I don't know if you're anything like me, but anytime I've ever played video games, it's like they go from being really fun and almost like easy, and then you hit a certain level and it gets to this point where you're like, this is actually like quite difficult. And that's the same thing with life, where a lot of times you'll be on certain levels and it will feel really difficult, but then you get to the next level and you're like, okay, I'm not saying the last level was easy, but it's not as hard as the current level I'm on. So now that we've unlocked this idea that knowing one of the most important things that you're going to need in order to propel forward is that you are going to need a mentor. In the preparation for this episode, in thinking about how I have gotten to have a lot of different opportunities to be in a lot of different fields. I mean, I've worked in fast food, I've worked in retail, I have packed airplane parts, I've worked at an accountant firm, I've worked at a startup, in an insurance company. I've done so many different things and I've gotten to meet a lot of different people along the way. One of the most important things that I've learned is you don't want to mislabel a relationship that you have in your life. I think it's easy when you come across people and they teach you things that you can be like, oh, this is my mentor. And don't get me wrong, that's great. But there's a couple of key things that you want to focus on when we're thinking about this idea of mentor. So, of course, using movie and TV show references, because I mean, it's me. What else am I going to reference? A lot of times when you think of mentors, I think it's easy to think of Yoda in Luke Skywalker, because here Luke Skywalker is trying to learn just all these different things. And so Yoda comes in, teaches him how to use the Force and just a variety of things that come along with it. Now, when we look at other characters such as Tony Stark and Spider-Man, you have Peter Parker, who's a young kid in the process of just really trying to learn what being a hero is. And so then you have Tony Stark, who comes in and is mentoring him. And then taking it up to the movie The Karate Kid, not the one with Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan. I'm talking about the original Karate Kid. I believe it was made in like the 80s or the 90s with Mr. Miyagi and I can't remember the actor's name that actually played the Karate Kid. That was a big movie in my house growing up. Of course, we'd always do like wax on, wax off. But even looking at Mr. Miyagi and the Karate Kid, that was a mentoring relationship. And lastly is I think about the Hunger Games, because when I was in high school, the Hunger Games was one of the biggest movie franchises at the time. I just think about Haymitch and Katniss and just their dynamic. That was a true moment of mentorship between the two of them. When we are talking about mentorship, I think it's really important to look at those 4 key components of mentors and their proteges, let's say. And something else to recognize is you have moments in your life where you start a new job or you start a new skill, and you're going to have people that come in and they teach you and they train you, and we're going to call them trainers. So you have people that are your trainers, but then you have people that are your mentors. And then I lovingly refer to the other people that give you little pieces of wisdom along the way, or I'll call them golden nuggets, is the other guys. And there's nothing wrong with the other guys, but they're the other guys. So you have these 3 main roles. You'll have people that come into your life, whether it's for a job, whether it's for a skill, or whatever the case may be, and they come in, they train you because it's almost like their social obligation or their job obligation to come in to train you. They could be great trainers. The difference with a mentor is, and I want you to hold on to this idea, is a mentor walks the path with you, not for you. A lot of times, because I've worked in a lot of different careers and jobs, I've gotten to have a lot of different trainers. You will have people that come in and they train you and they'll be like, this is what I do, this is what you should do, and don't talk to me type of thing. Then you have some people that are kind of like, I just can't wait to be done with you. And then some people just want to talk to you and they have no desire to train you whatsoever. A mentor is very different. A mentor has this mindset of longevity because what they realize is whether this is a career, whether this is a skill, they realize that they're not going to be around forever. And ultimately, mentorship has to do with longevity. It has to do with this idea of legacy, what goes on beyond this person. With a mentor, the idea of a mentor is they are there because they are invested in you as a person. So they take on your success as their success, but they take on your failures as their failures, which is a really unique experience to have. And what's also really special about this idea of mentorship is you'll have these moments where these mentors will go to bat for you. They'll fight for you. And I think it's interesting because you can have these moments with mentors where there's a great love and a respect for them. But then there's also these moments of where there can be resistance, because the other thing is with mentors, they're not there to soften you. They're actually there to sharpen you. And so perfect examples, I always think about Haymitch and Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games, because throughout the whole first movie, Haymitch is like trying to soften Katniss up. And if you notice in the movie, she can almost be like this unlikable character because she doesn't fit the status quo of what the Capitol wants. Whereas Haymitch is trying to soften her up, trying to get her to have the look that she wants, but it doesn't make her softer. It doesn't make her more likable. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's repulsive, but that is what makes the people love her. So the Capitol people don't necessarily like her, but the average person does like her because she's real and she's authentic. She's not soft in the way that she's easily flexible to the demands of the Capitol. What you see with Haymitch is he is doing everything that he knows on how to make Katniss likable, but in reality, she doesn't find what he's doing as being helpful. In fact, she's finding it to be the complete opposite. When you move into the second movie and you see this idea where all of a sudden there's this whole plan involving Katniss that she has no clue about, but it's because Haymitch had helped orchestrate this plan. And if you notice with mentors, so like Haymitch, an example, is he's out for the best interest of her and for the society as a whole. He's not out for his best. He's holding this idea of having the best interest for Katniss at heart. This idea with Haymitch is, if you notice in the second movie, they have this whole plan orchestrated that Katniss has no idea about to ultimately get her out of the Hunger Games arena that she was brought into the second time. And so by the time she gets out and she realizes there was this whole plan that was orchestrated and that Haymitch actually was part of orchestrating that plan, that's when you come into some of this messy dynamics of mentors and their protege. Because it goes back to this idea of where mentors are in it for the well-being of their protege. It's not necessarily the well-being of themselves. And so that's one of those instances of where he's thinking ahead in the terms of what is going to be the best, not only for the society, what is going to be the best for Katniss. We have to get her out of this arena. And so what's really neat is I've gotten to have a lot of different mentors in a couple different areas of my life. And one of the most impactful mentors I had in my life was when I was stepping into this whole new world of business. And it was this moment when I was stepping into being in a startup and learning everything I needed to learn about insurance as an industry and as a whole. It was great because in a lot of ways, this relationship and this dynamic that I had, it started off what felt like kind of like a trainer, where it's like, okay, you're training me on teaching me what the fundamentals of this industry are. Okay, you're teaching me the best processes and procedures of this. But then what was really unique is the moment where all of a sudden it starts to change from being a trainer to being a mentor. And that is where, and a lot of times these relationships can happen like that very naturally, where it starts as being a trainer, but eventually over time it can shift into being a mentor. And if you're someone that is looking to find a mentor, two things can happen. You can either find a mentor, and the best way to find a mentor is to look at their life. So meaning this, if you're trying to find a mentor in business or in your career, I recommend you look at someone that is having the results that you want. And you want to see the longevity that that person has. So you want to pick your mentor very specifically. And you want someone that's going to have integrity. You're going to want someone that has done the hard work, because that's going to produce the best results in what they can necessarily provide back to you. Whether you're starting in a new organization, some organizations, when I worked at an accountant firm, they actually had where they did mentoring programs, which is great because you want someone that wants to mentor you. And so in this particular instance, I didn't need to go out and find a mentor. My mentor found me. There's 3 separate instances where you'll find a mentor. Either you go out and you find a mentor, the mentor finds you, or you're put into a situational moment, and that's where you connect with a mentor. Situational would look like Haymitch in Katniss Everdeen, where she got pulled to go to the Hunger Games, and she was given a mentor, and it was Haymitch, and that was situational. You look at Tony Stark and Peter Parker. Tony Stark found Peter Parker online and he ended up mentoring him. And then when you start to look at some of these other individuals like the Karate Kid, he ultimately found Mr. Miyagi and so on and so forth. Going back to the story of me when I was starting in this startup and I had no clue about insurance and I needed all the help I could get. So I had a coworker reach out to me, started as this training opportunity where I thought it was going to be, I'll teach you this, I'll teach you that. And in a lot of ways, that was what I was used to, was people would teach me, they would train me things, and then they would just throw me into the deep end and they'd say, good luck, kid. And in this moment, it wasn't like that, because what happened is there were separate instances where a lot of times it's the way people talk, which is great. And my mentor in this instance, she would always say things like, if you have a problem, call me, reach out. I'm happy to help. It would be things like that. And then it would be something along the lines of you always want to help the next person get their right footing. And so there was a lot of these different one-liners that she would have that it really instilled this value of understanding and taking care of the other people around you. And it goes back to that cheesy phrase of teamwork makes the dream work. But it's true, because if you can value your team, then you can make the dream work with that said team. So in that industry, she had taught me so many different principles that I needed. And by her teaching me those practices, teaching me the fundamentals, it propelled me. It propelled me into parts of my career I didn't really even kind of see coming, but it was because she gave me the tools that I needed. Once a mentor gives you the tools or lays the foundation in you on how to move forward, it's ultimately up to you what you end up doing with it. And so it was really cool with this mentor, and something that really stuck out to me was this moment where there was a particular promotion coming up, and it was within a certain department, and they were like, would you be interested in this promotion? It was more of a sales role, and it was something where I was like, you know what, I've been in sales before. It's not my favorite. And it was just one of those moments where it's like, oh, no worries. That's fine if you're not interested. But then she hit me with this question. What do you want? What is it that you're looking for out of your career that you ultimately want? I remember when she asked me that question, it was the most simple question, but I did not have a good answer. And a lot of times that's life. Really, really simple questions will come your way. And yet they're the most puzzling ones. That was just a moment where I sat there and it was great, because ultimately where I was like, and I think once you realize I didn't know what to say back, it was one of those things where it's like, take time, figure it out, and let's see how we can propel you into that direction. That was a moment where it made this lasting impression. I couldn't forget about it. After she had hit me with the question of what do you want? And even saying, it's okay, take some time to think about it. The best part of that whole conversation is by the time she had settled, it's okay, think about what it is that you want. So even after our conversation and she realizing that I was still in this moment of where I hadn't really thought about the trajectory of my career was at this moment in time, but when she was talking to me, there was this very clear moment in time where it was breaking this barrier. That's when she moved from being this idea of being like a trainer to being a mentor. I remember she had just given me this advice where she goes, Christina, as a woman, when you're in business, a lot of times it's easy to sit and to wait for opportunities. But the truth is, you won't get opportunities if you sit and you wait. And the reason why she was saying that was because a lot of times when you're working with other men in this field, men will just get up and they'll go and they'll take opportunities. She goes, if you can't stand up and go and take opportunities for yourself, you'll never have opportunities. And she goes, and as women, she goes, it's great to be able to carve out space for other women to give them opportunities. And I just remember that was a moment. So even though I didn't necessarily want the job promotion that she was talking about, it was so unique to just see really this ability to see this kindness where all of a sudden I realized, oh, she's more than a trainer. She is a mentor. She was looking out for my well-being. She was seeing that I had this ability that if I wanted to be in sales, I could be in sales. I had the bandwidth for it, but it maybe wasn't necessarily something that I wanted. And it was unique because over time, as I had gotten to become the head of my department and she was leading her department, it became this cadence where we were able to work very well together because ultimately there was this trust that was coming from both sides. So even in moments where there could be a questioning of like, oh, like what path are you thinking about taking? What I did, like kind of that, once again, looking at that idea of career, shifting things around. And ultimately, there's nothing better than when you have a mentor and you decide to make a big life switch instead of staying necessarily with a safe career and venturing out to something else. There's nothing greater than when you have a mentor that can look at you and say, because they've walked with you through some tough things, and they can just look at you and say, you know what, I know you'll be successful in whatever you do because you have a work ethic to follow it. And that's one of those moments where having mentors, they're so helpful. But like I said, with mentors, you have all the other different types of people that come with them. So like a perfect example is, like I said, the other guys. And so the other guys isn't anything bad, but a lot of times what happens is if you think about being in like a corporate company, not everybody can be mentored by the CEO. It's just not possible. There's one person and a variety of people. So a lot of times higher up people can be associated as the other guys, where they'll have great nuggets of wisdom when you pass them. But if you're not working with them daily, they get categorized as the other guy. And it's funny because I had remember there was this great one-liner that I had heard from the CEO of my former company. And we had been in this meeting and they were talking about developing a certain program. And one of my favorite lines that he had ever said is, of course, you're always talking about pricing. How much is this going to cost? What is this going to look like? And my favorite thing is he had said, like, I want to do this right. He goes, I don't want to pay pennies for a rocket ship because the goal is to come back. He was talking about it in the mindset of if you're building a rocket ship and you're trying to make it to the moon and you get to the moon, you want to come back. So why would you pay just enough for it to make it all the way to outer space, land on the moon, but then it breaks down and you're stuck up there? And that was one of those lines where I was like, wow, that's really great. I've also heard this other saying on the internet, which has become my new favorite, is buy it nice or buy it twice. And it's true. Anytime I've ever tried to be cheap and buy something not nice, actually, that sounds weird, but anytime I've tried to basically be cheap or try to save money, something has always gone wrong with whatever the item is that I've bought. But if I buy it nice, I don't have to buy it twice. That line was so true. Absolutely. That was one of those moments where you get some advice from the other guys. Maybe they're not your mentors. Maybe they don't have the same level of investment into you as your mentors do, but they still have a lot to offer. And even when I was working in a retail store and there was this time where I was thinking about leaving to pursue other opportunities, and I had this assistant store manager come in and he basically is like, no, I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight for you to get the job that you want and the wages that you deserve. I had never looked at that assistant store manager as a mentor, but it was one of those things where you can be like a trainer, you can be a manager, you could be a leader and still have a well-being aspect that you want to look out for other people. The great thing about all of those things is managers, trainers, you need all of those. It's the ecosystem. It's like the dynamic of a family where you have the parents, you have the siblings, you have the aunts, you have the uncles, all play a really important role. But once again, there's just a different place that a mentor holds, just like the other guy, just like the trainer, just like the manager. They all hold different places. All in all, the best way to level up is by mentorship. It really is. You hear the life lessons that someone else has learned that maybe you don't have to take the time to learn. But the one thing I've learned the most with about having a mentor is wasted time. And it sounds weird, but what I mean by wasted time is a lot of times you don't value what it is that the mentor has to offer because you get so sucked into the busyness of life, whether it's being in a career and trying to meet deadlines and just whatever the case is. So often we don't value the time spent with our mentor until you part. You know, I think about Luke Skywalker and Yoda, and it's not until Yoda is gone that it's almost like Luke feels this devastation. And it's the same thing with Peter Parker and Tony Stark. It's not until Tony Stark dies and then even finding out that Tony Stark is going to come back and play the new villain, Doom something. I don't know. Sorry, I Sorry, I'm more of the movie watcher than I am the comic book enthusiast. And so, but that's one of those perfect examples of where Peter Parker, he's so used to going to Tony Stark to talk about these different things. But even Tony Stark, when he was alive, he protected Peter. He didn't want him involved in certain things. He knew the significance of what being a hero was. He knew the burdens those things cost. And Peter Parker, when he first entered the stage, he was really on the young side, where he was just in the middle of going to high school. And it was one of those things, out of the kindness of Tony being this mentor, it was realizing you have the rest of your life to know how hard life can be. Might as well enjoy a few years of bliss. It makes me think of that phrase, ignorance is bliss, where it's like you're ignorant. Enjoy the few years of bliss that you have. And that is the beauty of these relationships. And so, like I said, it's easy to undervalue the time that you have with a mentor, because when they're there, they're there. But what I want you to hold on to is mentors are in your life for a season and a reason. And so the thing is, they come in for a season, but then they're gone shortly after because there was a reason for them to be there. The other thing with mentorship is it's so easy to get caught up. I think about the idea of like best friends, and you're taught growing up you can only have one best friend. And I think we think the same thing with mentors, where it's like there could only be one mentor. And a lot of times in life, you can have multiple mentors. You can have people that make lasting impressions. The cycle of life can be a very long time. So to limit yourself to only having a few short years with one particular mentor, when there is a whole world of people out there that want to give whatever morsels of wisdom that they have to someone that really wants it ultimately. And your mentor is a good mentor when there's someone that instills a belief system into you. And that is the most important part of mentorship. But I also feel like it's the least spoken part of mentorship, is the idea of instilling a belief system into you. You think of Mr. Miyagi with the Karate Kid, with the wax on, wax off. He was instilling this belief system into him that it was this redundancy where he could do these hard things. Even when the Karate Kid, like when he's in his final fight and he really injures his foot and he gets back up and he does that crazy like foot kick thing. It was this belief system Mr. Miyagi instilled into him, where it's more than just putting the work in, but it's having the belief system to back it up too. To hold on to our idea of leveling up, propelling forward, moving into those areas of success that you want, because maybe you've hit moments in your life where you're like, you know what, I feel like I'm at a standstill. I don't know how to move forward. I don't know how to get to the place that I want to get to. Or maybe you're like me, where it's like, I have an idea where I want to go, but I have the questions to ask, but I don't have the ability to build the momentum. Where do I get that? Mentors. And where do you find a mentor? And the thing is, you can search for a mentor, but oftentimes the best ones will find you. Whether you're walking in a park or working in business, they'll find you and ask the most simple but confusing questions like, what do you want? Sounds easy until they expect an answer. Anyways, but the point is, finding mentors. You can find a mentor, but choose your mentor wisely. The last thing you want to do is mislabel a trainer as a mentor, because mentors, what they'll do is they will go after whatever it is that you want with you, because they see your success as their success, but they also find your failures to be their failures. So to wrap this whole concept up into a phrase, episode in a phrase, it would be meaningful mentors. I feel like the picture for mentor would be Mr. Miyagi. And it's just funny because growing up, I had always heard this phrase all the time, was give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And that's what mentors do, is they teach you the skill so that you have it for a lifetime. Whereas a lot of times trainers, they might just throw you the fish so they can move on with their day, Anyways, so without any further ado, let's jump into our sticky thoughts that stick. So 1, mentors are with you for a season, but make a lasting impression. 2, anyone can provide insight in a moment, hence the other guys. 3, meaningful mentors instill a belief system that can never be shaken. Last but certainly not least, 4, be prepared for the easy questions like, what do you want? Because they'll expect an answer. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today and talking about mentors and how to level up. I'd love to connect with you more. You can connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Let's Unravel Pod. If you enjoyed this week's episode or the podcast show in general, Please leave a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Your comments and 5-star ratings go a long way. Also, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube or the follow button on Apple Podcast or Spotify to stay up to date on all of our latest episodes. We release new episodes every single Thursday, and you are not going to want to miss a thing. Like I said, our first guest appearance is going to be next week. You're not going to want to miss this. Well, I guess it's that time of the episode to let you know my thoughts on Taylor Swift's engagement. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. It'll be really cool to see what her wedding looks like and if we get any photos of it. Anyways, drop your thoughts down below. I know if you are excited about her engagement too, or maybe you're annoyed by it. And if you are, I am so sorry. Anyways, it was great talking to you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.